Annie, welcome to the Personal Best podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I am so excited to have you here. I know we've had to reschedule already, which is
no
my
problem.
fault for getting sick, but I'm just so excited to chat to you today. And I think our audience are going to learn a lot of really interesting things.
I hope so.
That's
no
the goal.
promises.
So the first question I want to ask you is very broad, is why should we care about our gut health?
Okay, so to me, our gut health is our overall health. There's approximately 70% of our immune system is in our gut, and that's how important it is. Like they say, around 90% of our serotonin is made in our gut. So to me, that's everything.
Yeah, because it's something I think has become a lot more popular recently with people like Tim Spector talking about how important it is. But there's still a lot of misunderstanding around what it actually is, how we can, optimize our gut health. And I think it would be really great for the listeners to understand a bit more about the personal health journey that you've been on. And I know that you've gone through periods of having digestion issues and dealing with bloating and loads of other symptoms that are really unpleasant when you're going through it. So how did you go from that place to being able to heal your gut?
Well, it's a long story, but I will try and just give you kind of the highlights of it.
Yeah.
But basically, a bit of a background on me is that I've suffered with gut health issues, I'm going to say since I was 14. It was always a problem. Me and my friends used to sort of laugh about it at school because I feel like when you get older, especially as a woman, a lot of women, I don't know the stats on this, but a lot of women deal with bloating and gut issues.
It's like a meme, like hot girls have stomach problems.
Literally that. And I used to normalize it as well, probably because of those memes. But when we were at school, it was just this kind of crazy thing. And I was actually saying to you when we were chatting before the podcast, but I have quite a lot of people in my family that have celiac disease. So I think I was always sort of just told it was genetic. I then went for a food intolerance test when I was a little bit older, and they went through the classic, like, no dairy, no gluten. I know a lot of people try and cut those things out thinking they're going to help, that's going to help. And nothing helped. So I went through university having this like super restricted diet and came into adulthood with the same issues, just thinking there was nothing that I was going to be able to do about this. It's just my genetics. And then I was dealing with a knee injury, and basically alongside that, my gut health had just reached this place where it was like chronic bloating every day after everything I ate, even through cutting out these things that I thought I was intolerant to. I wasn't having like chickpeas, lentils, aubergine, all these things that I just thought were just constantly causing me bloating. From there, I just thought, let's do something about it. And I actually have looked at a lot of Tim Spector's research, and he's just absolutely amazing. And I just decided I'm going to implement some of these things that I was reading about, partially through his research, partially just things online, and just see what happens. And I have a little bit of something that really, I guess, got me thinking about it was in Tim Spector's book, Food for Life, I think it's called. He references this study it was a study done on people going through secondary melanoma, I believe. It's something very personal to me because it's exactly what my mum's been through before, and we really nearly lost my mum to it. And she was offered immunotherapy treatment, which is still quite an experimental form of cancer treatment. And she did super well from the treatment. And his study, although it's small at the moment, basically looks at the link between gut health and patients going through a secondary melanoma and have been offered immunotherapy, and just talking about the success rate on the back of that. And I just thought, that's not a coincidence. My mum actually grew up in Kenya and has always eaten this amazing, diverse diet, and has really impacted how I've eaten. So, things like she was giving us like papaya when we were younger. And at the time, that was just such an unusual thing to be eating. And we'd have these huge like salads full of loads of different things when we were younger, served with every meal, like avocado, pine nuts, walnuts.
Amazing. Yeah.
But that's really sort of framed how she's eaten growing up in a different country.
Yeah.
And I just believe that alongside the fact that she doesn't eat a lot of ultra processed foods, has meant that she's come through this cancer diagnosis and has done super well from it. And that's actually the study that got me thinking, there's more to this. Let's try and implement some of this in my own life, because I was someone who, although has always eaten a really healthy diet, and I think actually to my friends, they probably would have said that I ate an extremely healthy diet, but it was actually full of lots of things like Diet Coke, Coke Zero, ultra-processed foods that I hadn't realised were ultra-processed. So things like bagels, bread, crumpets, but, you know, all those classic supermarket brands that we don't realise are full of, you know, these extra things added to them, let's say. So basically, I experimented, went through this whole process of changing things up, let's say, in a big, big way. And I've now got to a point where I'm at now where I so infrequently get bloated. I'm like a whole different person. And my body has changed in so many ways from the outside, but also on the inside. And I've literally never felt better.
I'm so happy for you that you've been able to arrive at the place you are now, because I can only guess how difficult it was to deal with all of those symptoms of having, you know, gut issues and everything. When you were going through that, did you seek any like medical advice or nutritional advice? And I guess what was the like prognosis that they gave you versus what you've done yourself?
The amount of times I was in and out of the doctors, and this is still crazy to me, but I think I have friends that are doctors, and when you realise how little of their training involves nutrition, it makes sense. I think they have like a couple of lectures or like a module on nutrition.
Sure.
In and out of doctors loads. And like I said, I had these food intolerance tests, which were actually recommended to me by a doctor. I probably did the FODMAP diet that everyone's heard of, like elimination diets, so many things. And I was given the diagnosis of IBS, but when you learn more about it, it's just such a broad term that covers just basically any digestive issues. I've had H. pylori in the past, and if you don't know too much about that, what that is, it's basically this thing that a lot of people have, not many people show symptoms of, and it's just kind of eats away at your stomach lining, I believe. And I was never given any nutrition advice on the back of coming through that. And that's probably the most important thing, is to build up your gut microbiome on the back of that. So
absolutely. Yeah. And it's also like interlinked. Obviously, if you're having issues with your gut, then it's to do with what you're eating, because that's where we're like digesting our food and stuff. But I think it's really interesting that you sort of decided to take matters into your own hands, and you decided to do your own research and experiment with things. But I'd be interested to know if there was a tipping point where you were like, enough's enough, I need to try and do something about this, because obviously you were dealing with all those issues for quite a long time.
Yeah, definitely. I think there was a point where every day after everything I ate, I would just experience this extreme bloating, and just even finding clothes that would fit me were just so hard. Like everything, I was just buying in bigger sizes. I was going on holiday, always making sure I had an emergency swimsuit. That's what I'd call it, an emergency swimsuit, always in my bag. I'd often have to go to change into it after lunchtime. And I'd be sat around the pool with my gorgeous group of girls being like, why am I the only person that experiences this? And it's not to say they don't experience bloating, but in such an extreme way that it would literally cause me to look pregnant. And I just thought, I can't go on like this. There are so many foods that I'm struggling with. I'm like afraid of eating out, and I would eat out, but it's just knowing the symptoms I was going to get after were just so extreme. That I just thought when everything started to get better in terms of my knee injury that I was going through, I thought, right, come on, this is my time. I'm going to do something about it. And I actually went into this process of totally changing my diet without knowing it was going to help. Yeah, I wasn't really looking at what would hopefully happen on the back of it. But after a couple of weeks, I started noticing some changes, and by 3 months, I'd say, I felt like a whole different person. But even down to my energy levels, my skin, I was really struggling with some adult acne. My skin just improved so much. My immune system, I was always someone, I was actually saying to my best friend the other day, she was reminding me that I was someone who, if anyone had a cold in the room, I was going to wake up with a cold the next day. I can't even remember the last time I had a cold. So just all these things that I'd noticed off the back of changing my diet, that now I just have such a strong belief that what you put on your body really is everything.
Yeah, 100%. And it's really interesting that obviously with you having this overhaul on your diet and lifestyle, that it fixed problems that you didn't even realize were related to that, if that makes sense. Like, I completely understand why you'd want to try and tackle the bloating issue, because everyone listening to this has probably experienced like uncomfortable bloating. And, you know, as a woman, like the week before my period, I always feel that. And there's definitely levels to it, but I know when it's like uncomfortable and it's so frustrating and you want to wear the nice bodycon dress and then you just can't.
Absolutely. There's this trend on social media at the moment talking about bloating and normalizing it. And my view on that is, it is normal if you're experiencing a little bit of bloating on the odd occasion. But if you're experiencing extreme bloating like I was every day, there's nothing normal about that. There's a lot that you can change. And I think for someone like me, who really thought that they were eating a healthy diet that I thought was diverse, I ate lots of vegetables and fruits. Yeah, I think just people don't realize that there's a lot that they can change and will get good results from.
I think it's really important to draw a distinction between, you've got a bit of a, you know, fuller stomach because you've just eaten a big meal.
Yeah,
like, that's
hormonal.
normal.
Yeah, or hormonal.
Exactly, like PMS. That's going to happen. But yeah, if you're experiencing severe bloating after eating just like a morsel of food, then maybe something's going wrong there.
Exactly.
And I think it's very open and vulnerable of you to sort of share those pictures and videos as you've done on Instagram, but it really shows like the difference that your body has gone through.
Yeah, it really has. I feel I couldn't feel less similar to then. I just feel like a totally different person. And the first time I shared one of those before photos I share quite a lot now, it was possibly the most uncomfortable thing for me ever, because I was like, wow, I've taken those in a vulnerable state. I never thought I would be sharing those online, but I think I now believe so strongly in this message that I might, look, if it's going to take someone to see that, to relate to it, and now look at where I am, to be like, right, I need to also sort this out, you know, in my life.
Yeah, I think it's really brave to do that. And I know that you are helping so many people through your page and also your coaching, which we'll get into later. But if someone is listening to this and they've experienced a lot of the same symptoms that you have, maybe they're in a position of trying to take control over their health and, you know, their digestion and stuff, what would you say are like the first entry-level steps to healing your gut in the way that you have?
Okay, so what I would say to a client is I will usually look at their diet and then pinpoint the things that they might not realize are ultra-processed foods. So just to kind of break it down, the easy way to look at it is if a food label has lots of ingredients that you don't understand, that's typically what an ultra-processed food item is. And to look to see whether there are lots of things in their diet that are ultra-processed that they don't realize are ultra-processed, or they don't realize the effects that they can have, or that they don't realize the effects that it can actually have on you. So one of the really common things, and this was me, I was a Coke Zero and a White Monster addict.
Guilty.
And I think, I know, great drinks, not great for our guts. But I'd eat a relatively healthy diet, but embellish them every day with Coke Zeros and White Monsters, and also not understand why I was going through such severe bloating and gut health issues. So quite often someone will say, I eat really well, I eat a variety of plants, I drink Coke Zero every day. I'm like, well, let's maybe start by reducing that and replacing it with something. If you're after something cold and fizzy, try like a kombucha, for example. There are always going to be good alternatives. So I would say looking at things like that, but also, like I was saying with my own diet, the items of food that I was consuming every day that were ultra processed that I wasn't aware were ultra processed. And for me, a lot of those came in the form of like protein bars, your everyday supermarket loaves of bread, even if they're whole grain granary loaves, they can often still fall into that category. bagels, crumpets, pita breads, all those sorts of things, look at what's in your diet there. So I would say minimizing ultra processed foods. I don't believe in just cutting things out because I don't believe that makes a happy, healthy, sustainable diet.
Sure.
But minimizing them is a really, really good place to start.
Yeah.
Do you want my step 2 and 3?
Yeah, go for it, and then we'll unpack.
I would then look at diversifying the plants that you're eating. So things that fall into the category of plants, people usually think veggies and fruits, but actually also things like nuts, herbs, seeds, legumes, spices. I've probably forgotten a few. All of those come into the category of plants. So really trying to mix them up. And the easiest way to do this is just to focus on having like one thing in your food shop every week that's a little bit different. So me and my boyfriend Elliot, we always challenge ourselves with this. So if we've bought broccoli one week, we'll go for green beans and then add something random in like fennel. Let's look for a recipe that has fennel in. Just constantly mixing it up. Also making things like nut and seed mixes you can sprinkle on breakfast to add different varieties in. And in the words of Tim Spector, trying to aim for around 30 varieties a week is a really good place to start.
Because it sounds like a lot, but that's, I think, if you're thinking about like a whole fruit, a whole vegetable, but actually when you incorporate all these little things, like 10 different types of nuts, like, and it's quite simple.
Things like spices fall into that category. So, you know, if you're making a curry with lots of different spices, it all counts. You know, adding coriander on top, if you're someone that likes that, that counts as a plant. So there are lots of ways that you can incorporate this sort of 30 into your diet. You know, you want to have smoothies and throw a load of things in there.
Yeah,
that's also great. And then my step 3 would be adding more probiotic rich foods into your diet, which essentially add more good bacteria or can add more good bacteria into the gut. So things like, for me, I love to have like a Greek yogurt, a high quality one, make sure it states that it has live active cultures on the back. Kefir, that's a really great fermented milk product. Some kombuchas are really great, but things like sauerkraut and kimchi, if you can stomach them, because I love them, my boyfriend's really not a fan, all those things can add good bacteria into your gut. So those would be my 3 steps to really look at if you're really interested in kind of getting your gut microbiome to a point where it's strong and healthy.
Absolutely. This is all such good advice. And what I really like about it is it's all about incorporating new things and it's not about restriction.
Exactly.
Because a lot of, I think, nutritional advice out there can focus on reducing calories and like simplifying your meals so that you can easily track them. And I feel like there's such a focus on macronutrients.
Yes,
and
such a focus.
Hit your protein, and the protein comes in so many processed forms, like protein shakes and protein bars. I mean, there's like a whole protein section in some supermarkets now, and you can get like pancakes and bread and pasta, and it's obviously all ultra processed foods. And if your focus is on digestion and incorporating more micronutrients, I would suggest that those probably aren't the best foods to be consuming if you're trying to hit your protein goals.
Absolutely. You know, high protein and healthy diet get confused quite easy. People think, I'm eating a lot of protein, I'm eating well. And it's just so far from the truth.
Yeah. And
we need to be eating more fiber. That's the thing that we're lacking.
Definitely. And I think it's also interesting how things are marketed to us, right? Because like you're saying with Diet Cokes and Coke Zero, and I love a Coke Zero, but it's 0 calories. And so it's often promoted as like, you know, a good thing to consume whilst you're on like a fitness journey.
Exactly.
Same with like low calorie bars and like shakes and things, but we don't really know what's in them.
Exactly. And they're just full of things that are not gonna let you lead your happiest, healthiest, like fullest life. They're really not. So I think having them as in your diet for enjoyment, but as a really minimal part of your diet, is the best way to look at it. But I actually did an Instagram post on this last night. But if you're concentrating on the majority of your diet being whole foods, there's then little room for the other things. So rather than looking at, like you're saying, eliminating things constantly, being like, I can't have that, just focus on what you can have in your diet And then those things will become such a minimal part anyway. It just makes it a lot easier for you.
Definitely. Yeah, I've noticed that myself, because when I'm more dialed in with my nutrition and I'm cooking things from home and I'm like using whole foods, I eat like the correct amount because I'm satiated.
Exactly.
And like there's such a big difference I've noticed in myself when I'm just eating out of convenience and I'm buying all of these processed foods. Like I went on holiday in summer and we had days of traveling and I was just eating like bags of crisps and cookies, and it's fine, you know, as a one-off. And also I'm not someone who deals with like particular sensitivity to digestion, but I just realized how different my eating habits were from eating these processed foods to like cooking nutritious meals.
Your body literally sees them in totally different ways, and the way that we digest things in an ultra processed form is just so different from how we digest them in their whole food state.
Yeah.
It's really, really important to just try and fill your diet with mainly whole foods. And also for people watching or listening that don't know, whole foods, just essentially foods that are as close to their kind of natural state as possible. It's important to say, because I think a lot of people don't know what kind of comes into that category.
They just think they've got to shop at Whole Foods.
Yeah, exactly.
Spend like £100 on
you know,
Apple
auto corrects the word Whole Foods to capital W, capital F. That's how closely people
I
link
would
them.
love to buy everything there, but the funds will not
me too.
manage that, unfortunately.
That's goals for us both. Goals.
100%. But it's so interesting, this topic as well, because we definitely live in, you know, this modern society that doesn't always promote health and wellness. And if you think about like the Western diet compared to other countries, like you're saying your mom's Kenyan, where they grew up eating a really well-balanced, nutritious diet, whereas kids nowadays, unless your parents are going to provide you that education or you get that education through school, you're probably not going to understand what a good diet looks like.
No.
And it's so easy for us to just eat unhealthy without even realizing, because you try and buy things from like a garage if you're on a car journey or the airport or something. It's like really hard to find good food nowadays.
It is. Also, the food industry is so to blame for this, because the marketing that goes on and the false claims and things, like if you look at something and it's telling you it's high in fiber, you believe it's high in fiber, but what are we comparing it to?
Yeah.
There's just so much misleading information that goes on. I've actually seen quite a few really good social media accounts kind of crop up that are going around supermarkets these days. I don't know if you've seen them, and looking at food labels and being like, this is great, this isn't great, this is how you can get your protein from this without it being full of this and this.
Exactly.
But it's food labels are often really, really misleading, which is why if we're buying whole foods as the main part of our diet, you can't go too wrong with them usually, because they're in their original state. So
definitely. But I guess on that, what advice would you give to people as somebody who's, you know, managed to maintain like a well-balanced, nutritious diet, for those who are living busy lives and, you know, work a lot and want to be healthy? Like, how can you try and incorporate this nutritional advice into your everyday lifestyle?
So my main piece of advice would be to meal prep. It's literally my everything. If I start my Monday off and I've done my 2 hours of Sunday meal prep, I know it's going to be a good week. I think trying to stick to a diet that's going to favor your gut health when you're reliant on eating on the go, like that's such a difficult thing to do. I think just being prepared with your food. We have a non-negotiable Sunday food shop that we do online for convenience that arrives on a Sunday, and before bed I do my 2 hours of meal prep. And I will tend to prep the things that are time consuming to make during the week. So as an example, I'm going to say sweet potato. Roasting sweet potato. If you've got 5 minutes to put your lunch together, you're not going to be chopping and roasting sweet potato when it takes like 30 minutes to make nice roast sweet potato. So taking a few things from our diet that take a little while to do during the week, and just helping yourself out. I see it as like prioritizing your future self, doing things that your future self will be grateful for. I genuinely believe for me that meal prep is just like the best form of self-care.
Definitely.
It just
I never
helps so
used
much.
to, really. I used to think it was just a bit boring to like
It has a
prepare
bad
my
rep.
meals. Yeah, because I think there's this stereotype of like, you know, those
Yeah, I
plastic
know exactly
black
what you're gonna
Tupperware and
say.
it's just plain chicken, plain rice, broccoli. Like that's
Literally,
that's what I thought meal prep was. And I was like, that's for the bodybuilders out
Yeah.
there, not for me. And I'm now in a new job where I work quite inconvenient hours. So I'm starting at like 5 a.m. or I'll be at work till 9 p.m. So meal prep has been a lifesaver.
It's
So
so
I'm
good.
always making overnight oats or like bringing like chicken salads or like pasta dishes, because I know then that I'm going to stick to a way healthier diet than I would if I just relied on what was around me. Because like there's all sorts of things. I'm in Soho, I'm in central London. I'm like spoilt for choice of what to get. So obviously it's way healthier and cheaper.
So much cheaper. It really, really is. Like people spend approximately £7, I think, are the stats in London on buying food out every day. And mine and Elliot's weekly food shop is £70 every single week.
Yeah.
So that's £35 each. So if you think how much you're saving on that. So that's definitely an added bonus. But I think just getting to grips with the things that you want to be eating that are maybe a little more inconvenient to make during the week, and making sure you're prepared for the times where you're coming back home from work late, from the gym late, and you're thinking, I just need something really quick before bed. And your go-to would probably be something that's not too nutritious, or Deliveroo, Uber Eats. Just making sure you're prepared for those scenarios. I see it as breaking down as many barriers between you and a healthy diet as you can.
Yeah.
So just doing all those things that are going to really help your future self.
Make it easy for yourself.
Yeah.
I spoke to a nutritionist on the podcast before called Liam, and he said make your environment conducive to your goal.
Absolutely.
And if your goal is to eat healthy and eat a nutritious diet that's going to be good for your gut, then make sure you've got those foods in the fridge and the cupboard, and like you're well prepared. And obviously it feels a little bit tedious to do at first, but I think once you're in the routine of it, it just becomes second nature.
I prep probably half a fridge full of meal prep now in 2 hours.
I want to come round to your kitchen.
Honestly, I've got all the tips. But it's all about as well looking at your diet and the things that you want to be consuming. So I think you said overnight oats. I'm such an overnight oats advocate, as long as you're making them in the right way for your goals. But I make such a lovely nutrient-packed, like plant diversity rich overnight oats, and I do 4 or 5 like pots, little IKEA jars for the week. And then things like sweet potato, I often do like roasted salmon fillets or chicken or tofu in advance. Even steamed greens I do, because if you've got 5 minutes and you need to put something together, just grabbing a handful of those on your plate really quickly, that can really help you out. But also looking at the foods that are often less expensive, that fall into the processed food category. I like to refer to them as whole foods still, because they are pretty much whole foods.
Yeah.
But processed foods, just basically anything that's gone through a process to create the product. So yogurt will fall into that category, yogurt that's got nothing added to it. Also things like lentils, chopped tomatoes, they're tinned. They've gone through a process, obviously, to get them in the tin. And those kind of things can be really good convenience foods. So just adding half a tin of chickpeas into a salad really quickly for some protein and some fiber. You don't even have to cook them. So those kind of things can be really, really helpful.
Yeah.
It's not hard to do, but it's just about planning and having the right intentions.
Definitely. Definitely. No, that's all such good advice that I think is actually really easy for people to implement. Especially if you're already somebody that's interested in health and fitness. Like it's just making a few tweaks here and there that are going to support your goals. Something that we haven't spoken about but you touched on earlier is how your gut is linked to our brain in terms of how it makes us feel. I just wondered what you've learned about that you think people need to know.
I think just knowing that everything you put in your body is going to have an impact on your health and your happiness. And I'm not going to try and give out any stats here, but there are so many studies now that link our gut to things like depression and anxiety. And I think that just says a lot. Like what we eat really is everything. And it's just important that we're putting the right things in our body so we can feel our best. But even things like being able to focus with work, I'm definitely in a place where I'm the happiest version of myself now. And I'm going to put a lot of that down to what I'm putting in my body for sure.
Yeah.
So I feel like that speaks volumes.
Absolutely. And again, like, I'm so pleased for you that it's turned out that way. And I also think there's a huge link between stress and your gut.
Absolutely.
I've noticed that myself as someone who doesn't frequently suffer with digestion issues, but if I'm stressed, I'm bloated like constantly, and you feel quite like lethargic, I think, and you can notice the subtle differences in your like physiology.
For sure. And you know those sayings that like butterflies in the stomach and things like that? Like that all really hints at that.
Mm-hmm.
Like they really, really are so linked. And I'll have clients that I work with who will be eating everything right and then will tell me that they're having an absolutely awful week with, experiencing lots of bloating and things. But they're having the most stressful situation at work ever. And those things really are linked. So as much as what we put on our body is really, really important, you know, our brain and our gut are so connected from that point of view that, you know, sometimes it can be a little out of our control. But that's why it's important to do what we can do and control the things that we're able to, because there are sometimes external factors that we can't control.
Absolutely. And it's such a vicious cycle, right? Because if you're in a period of stress and then your body has a physical reaction, like maybe you're extra bloated or you are holding on to a bit more like water weight or inflammation, then you feel stressed because you're dealing with those things. And it's like it's a repetitive cycle. It's quite hard to break.
Oh, absolutely. I will say to the women that I work with, I'm like, the week before your period, expect to be bloated. If you are going to stand on the scales at that point, which I don't always encourage, but if you are going to, expect to see the scales go up, because you do retain water at that time of the month for almost every person that experience periods. So it's just, there are so many other factors that can come into play as well. So
but it's good to have that understanding rather than freak yourself out and think, oh my gosh, I've lost all progress or my body's changed so much.
And then the more stress comes into it and then you feel worse.
I know. Like, I guarantee like every woman listening has probably been through that at some point.
Yeah.
But just before we round off this conversation, I wanted to also talk about the role that exercise has played in your fitness journey, because obviously we've spoken a lot about nutrition, but I've also seen you post content about how maybe your fitness goals have changed, and actually finding the sort of movement that works for you and enables you to be the healthiest and happiest version of yourself. So obviously you went through that injury, but how has your mindset and relationship with exercise changed as well?
Going through the injury that I went through, it's difficult to kind of explain without getting emotional, but it really did almost end my life as I knew it. It totally shook up my life, and I really thought there was like no coming back from it.
Were you quite active before?
I was incredibly active. My whole job was built around fitness, and my history with fitness as well is, when I was growing up, I played squash competitively. So I played to quite a high level. And fitness was always such a huge part of my life. I didn't get into fitness through going to the gym. That kind of came second. I was really sporty growing up. And it shook up everything for me. But what it did do is, coming through it just offered me this mental strength with working out. And because I've experienced not being able to move my body, everything that I am able to do now, I feel so grateful for. It's just an immense amount of gratitude. And that comes into play when I'm lifting weights in the gym, which is really like my main form of exercise, alongside squash and little bits of cardio. I personally feel like lifting weights is a really, really important thing for us to be doing, especially as women. A lot of people don't see the value in it.
I know, yeah.
I know. I've seen such amazing results from it. But actually being able to push myself close to failure at the gym, I wasn't able to do that before. I really struggled with it. I would just go through the motions, always staying in my comfort zone, and having that gratitude because I know how it feels not to be able to do it now. Getting those extra last reps out, I'm telling you, there's a switch in my mind. I've seen such amazing progress from just really pushing myself in the gym and just pushing out those last few reps, even though it's
so hard.
It's so hard. That I would just say like that really is the key to success if you're looking to grow muscle and gain strength.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's totally changed actually how I feel about working out. And I literally used to go to the gym and lift the same weights every single week, which I now think is bizarre.
Yeah.
I'm like, why was I so in my comfort zone? But I guess, yeah, going through injury has really, really changed everything for me. And I'm just mentally so much stronger.
Yeah. I have so much like respect for you for how you obviously dealt with that, because I've not personally been injured at all, really. I've had a few niggles here and there, but even when I've had like a week of being ill, I just think, oh my gosh, I just want to be able to move and feel healthy again.
Yeah,
and
it's tough.
I'm sure a lot of people listening will feel exactly the same. And I think this idea of health and fitness and how much of it is exercise and how much of it is food is quite interesting as well, because often people will be, really pushing themselves in terms of exercise in the gym, but because their nutrition isn't maybe where it should be, they're not seeing the progress that they want. Is that something that you've had to also find the balance with and perhaps like instill in your clients?
For sure. I always say to my clients that if you're looking to lose fat or to gain muscle, a huge portion of it is your diet, and especially with fat loss, because I do work with a lot of women on a fat loss goal.
Yeah.
I say like 90% of it is what you're putting into your body. I would say to utilize fitness, and when it comes to my clients, I'm more talking about weightlifting for mental resilience, to get fitter, to get stronger. Well, fitter would really come with our cardio that we're doing alongside that, to get stronger, to gain muscle, and use your diet when we're talking about fat loss. Because you're right, I do see so many people. I've taken on a client recently, actually, she's like, I work out consistently 5 days a week, but I just never see progress. But then when I'm looking through her diet, there are so many things that I'm noticing. I'm like, look, we can change this up. You've already got this amazing foundation from your workouts. Change up your diet, and then we'll be making amazing progress before you know it. So,
and I think that shift in mindset is also a really positive one, because then you're not viewing exercise as a means to burn calories and lose weight. It's like, no, this is the thing that's going to make my body healthy and function better. And then obviously the diet changes that you're making as well, as long as you're not coming at it from a place of restriction. It's all just about trying to become the healthiest version of you. And that's something that I always try and preach on the podcast. And it's definitely my personal goal now, is just, I want to be the healthiest and happiest version of myself. And that partly includes like how I feel about my body and what I look like. But a massive part of it is actually just how I'm feeling day to day, like how I'm functioning.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just touching on what you said, there's such a toxic thing that I actually see with friends that I have as well, with chasing calorie burn and chasing like how many calories have I burned on my Apple Watch when I'm doing a workout, and trying to explain to women especially the difference between doing a HIIT session, which might on your watch burn more calories than a weightlifting session. Like, they're totally different things.
Yes.
A lot of the hard work with weightlifting is done after you've done the exercise, whilst your body's recovering. There's much less recovery generally that needs to be done from like a HIIT session, for example. They really are totally different things.
Yeah. And again, like with food, it goes back to how it's marketed to us. Like, we see so many of these workouts that are 20-minute fat loss.
I know.
HIIT fat burner.
Yeah, quick calorie burn.
Yeah, and then often like weightlifting is more directed at men to like get bigger and grow muscle, whereas actually, as you say, it's so beneficial to women. And
exactly,
I think if you go through that fitness journey correctly, you will see huge amounts of progress.
So much progress. And I just really, really believe in weightlifting and then doing cardio alongside that. If you want to do HIIT for fun, that's absolutely great. But if you're looking to really change your body composition, which a lot of my clients, that's their goal, I really would say that like strength training, resistance training is just the way forward.
100%. I can tell how passionate you are about this as you're like talking. And I know you've brought in your work with clients. But just to round this off, why did you decide to coach women who've perhaps gone through similar journeys to you, and how are you finding like that process of helping other people?
When I was in the depths of my injury and couldn't see a way out, all I wanted was to find somebody that I could relate to. And I would search through Reddit pages and pages to try and find someone who was going through this specific type of knee injury that I was going through, because it's not that common. Had been through the same operation that I had, because it wasn't that common. And I could not find anybody online. I actually ended up reaching out to a professional athlete, and she was probably the most helpful person.
Gosh, amazing.
I just wanted someone to relate to. And exactly the same with my gut health issues. I really felt like I had no friends that were going through the same thing as me. I didn't know where to turn. And I've basically taken everything that I've learned that we've spoken about today through my journey with injury recovery, gut health, and getting back into the best shape of my life, but the best place in my life, and put it into trying to help other women.
Yeah.
And put it into trying to help women who want to go through a similar journey to me. I just think that having someone coach you that has firsthand experience is just so important.
It's
and
really
I
important.
wish that I'd had like an older sister figure when I was going through it. So that's the whole reason that I started Accomplish Coaching, because I just so believe in gut health, especially for just health, happiness, and everything like that. And the two, like, and transforming your body really does come from both food and exercise. So I think linking the two together is just so important.
Yeah, but I think that's amazing, because what you're doing now is obviously what past you needed, and you can now be that person for other people. And spoken to a lot of guests on this podcast who have different niches but have gone into the coaching side of things.
Yeah.
And I remember one guest saying that he felt like it was almost unfair that he was gatekeeping all this knowledge that he'd built up. And he was like, I need to share this with people and help people.
I think I've gained so much, and hopefully my clients have as well, from just sharing my knowledge, the things that I've learned throughout this journey. And I always make sure, like through the platform that I use for my coaching, to put out little informative videos on things like pockets of information, so people can hear simplified versions of this, all these messages that are out there online that are just so difficult. I was actually scrolling through my reels the other day, and it's like, eat this, don't eat this, eat more of this, don't do this, sleep for this amount of time, walk this many steps a day. And I was like, oh, there's so much conflicting information. And I just truly believe that there are just a couple of things that you need to do well, and everything else falls into place.
Yeah. And it's having that like foundation of knowledge that you can then build upon. Yeah. But I totally agree that if you're just looking at social media, you're so overwhelmed with all this information. It's like, where do I even start? Like, do I need to be having this greens powder that I see on TikTok every single day? Yeah. Is that going to fix everything?
And no, is the answer.
Damn it.
I know. These things, it's not necessarily that they're doing any harm to our diets. It's just that people rely on them for the wrong reasons. I think people think that if they add something to their diet, like a greens powder, which are great, like they have their place 100%. Like I've taken them in the past as well. But they think if they're going to add in a greens powder or a probiotic, it will sort the rest of their diet out, when actually we need to be looking at like the root cause of these things.
Yeah, it's like putting a plaster on a wound.
Literally that.
But yeah, I completely understand why people want that quick fix solution, especially if you are dealing with really frustrating symptoms or you're not where you want to be in your terms of your like fitness goals. But I think a huge part of this and of things you've said today is also about having patience. Yeah. And appreciating that these things take time. And it also takes time to build in different habits, but bit by bit you'll get like to a place where you want to be.
Absolutely. And I think social media, as much as it's such a great place for knowledge, I do believe that, I'm going to call it the fitness wellness industry, has been divided into these two like categories. And one is like the yoga, Pilates, I eat really healthily, I'm plant-based kind of side. And the other one is like macro tracking, if it fits your macros thing, lots of ultra processed food. And there are not many people that kind of bring those things together. And I so passionately believe in both sides of it.
Yeah.
Like I'm someone that does a lot of weightlifting, but I'm also someone that really focuses on their nutrition and holistic wellness, I like to say. So I think just bringing those things together is such, it's really, really important.
Definitely. I can see that from my own social media feed as well. And sometimes I'm like, which camp do I belong to? Like, I don't know, but you don't have to
feel
slot
like
yourself
you
into a
belong
category.
To a camp.
Yeah, it's like find the things that actually work for you, and it's a personalized thing as well. I feel like I could go off on
there's so much to unpack.
Different tangents, but I'm gonna ask you the question I ask everybody, which is, if you had to give one piece of advice, or you can share a quote or something that you like to help people achieve their personal best, what would it be?
I would say to stay true to yourself. I have seen the most progress when I've looked at my own goals, the things that I've been going through personally, and gone from there. I think there's so much noise.
Yeah.
I think, like we were saying, social media offers so many different opinions that it's really easy to try and put yourself into a box and just hope that you're going to make the progress from there because you've seen someone else do that and that should work for my body. You know, that I guess you can take that and apply it to so many different things in life.
Definitely.
But I also think for me, business-wise, with my one-to-one coaching, rather than looking at the other things out there and being like, okay, I'm going to do that because that person's done that and it's been really successful, just taking what's actually important to you and going with that is my most important advice.
Yeah.
It's something I'm really trying to work on myself. And I know we were speaking before the podcast about comparing yourself to others. I really think that can be like, comparison is the thief of joy, they say. I so truly believe that. And I am someone who I have compared myself a lot in the past, but I really truly believe that a growth mindset comes from just head down, tunnel vision, stay in your lane, and just you'll get there.
Such good advice, and I completely agree, because it's so easy to look at somebody who, you know, emulates success in your eyes and you think, well, I just need to do exactly what they're doing, but you're not them.
Exactly.
Like, you are unique and there's so many different parts of you that are going to be different, and I think as long as you're being authentic to yourself and you are wanting to be the best version of yourself, then you're going to be going in the right direction.
Absolutely. And like I said, you can apply this to your nutrition, your fitness journey, all these kind of things. Like, we aren't all the same, and it's really important to remember that.
Yeah. And like, I know it's been said before in terms of fitness, but you could follow the exact same plan as someone and you're not going to have the same results as them because you're unique. And again, we can spread that out across your whole life. So I think that's a really, really nice message to end on. And I just want to say thank you so much
for
today.
having me.
I really do think in this world of social media where there's confusing messages and it's very overwhelming, I think you take up a really positive space, and I know that you're helping so many people. So
thank you so much. It's been lovely. Lovely.
Last thing, actually, where can people go if they want to follow you or inquire about coaching?
Okay, so my Instagram and TikTok handles are just Annie Openshaw. And you can inquire through a link in my bio, I'll say. My website's accomplishcoaching.co.uk, but it's all linked in my Instagram bio, YouTube description, TikTok, and everything like that.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ruby.
And thank you, everybody, for listening.